Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Kaga. Today I'd like to talk to you about destroyers, particularly. In this case, it's the Tier 7 Japanese destroyer, the Hatsuharu. So today we're going to cover a few topics. They're kind of big. Specifically, it's like how to play the game mode in a destroyers. How do I approach HP endurance? What is the strategy of the mode, or the particular game mode, I mean. The use of their armaments. Which do you use? The classic debate of AP or HE is brought up. The importance of anticipating your opponent's next move, or where they will go on the map, and the subject of picking your battles. Of course, this is all in the context of a very interesting, even if slow starting, match on the Two Brothers map in World of Warships. So, let's kind of talk some general basics here while we're waiting for the match to really pick up. Destroyers are generally machines that, well, I think from most of our experience, will punish us for being overly aggressive in our playstyles. It's little wonder, really. They're extremely fragile, they have low hit points, at least in comparison to cruisers or especially battleships. So the question becomes, how do we actively influence the tides of battle? And that's a very line-specific question. And today I'll be talking a little bit about how the Japanese destroyers do it, but there are some universal points worth mentioning that apply to all destroyers. They're stealthy, they're fast, and they're generally quite maneuverable. This means they're very flexible. That being said, they usually have some of the weaker guns available at tier for tier. This is generally made up for in the form of torpedoes. They generally have some of the more potent torpedoes tier for tier. There are some exceptions, of course, as with any class in any game, but we'll keep that fairly general because, well, not really general, it's very applicable in this particular case because we're talking a Japanese destroyer. They have very potent torpedoes. A key aspect of the destroyer class as a whole is that they become more deadly as the battle progresses. This is very similar to the French light tanks from World of Tanks. This aspect is particularly true in that their very bursty damage that they're capable of delivering with their torpedo armaments is more likely to one salvo not just one ship, but maybe even two ships, three ships, depending on the number of launches they have, with a single pull of the old torpedo trigger. And this means that a destroyer skipper should be actively trying to conserve their HP pool as much as possible. That is not to say that you shouldn't be near the front lines or actively participating in combat via scouting or other such activities. What this means is that you should be doing such actions and taking these risks only in cases that you are sure that there is payoff in doing so. Don't try to imitate Rambo in your destroyers. Be very calculating in this aggression. Make certain that it is worth potentially being sunk for to achieve a certain end. And that's a very important thing to recognize about this game, is that World of Warships is a game played in time. Because of the way ships move, it tends to be very slow. And that means that decisions have much more lasting ramifications on the battlefield, more so than like playing tanks or with aircraft. And this means that you have to start keeping an eye out for not only how you play your ship in any particular engagement, but also how you can affect the course of battle. This isn't always necessary, as in the case of your standard game mode, which is closer to like a giant bar brawl than it is an actual battle. But in the case of like the 3 or 4 point domination game modes, like the one that's featured right now, it is absolutely imperative that you keep an eye out for how you can affect the battle, especially in the case of destroyers, because you are a very flexible ship. You're very versatile, and people are going to have to get that much closer to you to spot you. This means that there are more opportunities to flow around the battlefield. And that's that unique ability of destroyers in the game, is that stealth, just innate stealth, really and truly, and their forced stealth ability in the form of the smoke screen as a consumable. Now, in order to actually do this, you have to spot opportunities before they start happening, and generally speaking, that comes down to awareness and paying attention to the map. And right now, just to illustrate this, I've spotted that enemy battleship coming down the slot, and I am going to flow with my allies to go intercept him to try to prevent that more crucial capture point from falling into enemy control. And other general things that you should be aware of when you're trying to figure out your impact on the battle, or how to have a better impact, is being familiar with your ship's characteristics, like the concealment, the detection, how quickly it accelerates, decelerates, the types of maneuvers you can pull in it, but also having good familiarity with your weapons. What are the traverse arcs of your torpedo tubes? How quickly do your guns turn? All of these things are very nice things to know. And now you might be tempted to say that, well, Kaga, you're basically advocating that destroyers should minimize their time in combat as much as possible, but you're showing us times where you're actually pulling the trigger. And yeah, that's because, one, this is very necessary, and two, there's going to be an opportunity that this creates, or that I anticipate it creating, because you don't see any backup following that battleship. So I'm planning to go up the slot after he's sunk and I stop being detected. And now while we're waiting for the next big push in this battle, talk about the subject of your armaments. And, it doesn't really matter which class you're looking at. Using your armaments effectively is what distinguishes the average players from the good ones. Needless to say, these are easy to learn in principle, but they're relatively hard to master for reasons. For destroyers, you have two basic armaments. You have your main guns and the torpedoes. Now, we tend to be very picky about when we launch torpedoes due to their long reloads, typically 1 to 2 minutes between salvos. And we tend to be rather choosy when we fire our guns, because they will typically reveal our position to the enemy upon firing. Now, I like to use my guns for a few situations, and perhaps this will illustrate why I was pulling the trigger earlier. The first one, I'm already detected. There's no harm in pulling the trigger. 2, I'm about to be detected and want to get the drop on an enemy destroyer. And this is usually the case when an allied cruiser or aircraft have an enemy destroyer spotted, and I can see the ticker, the distance ticker, is just outside of my detection range, and I happen to have the turrets pointing in the right direction. 3, and you saw me just do this on the Congo, was I want some extra damage on the target, and it's being fired upon by a number of allies, and I do this because, well, it's less likely that I'm going to take return fire. And 4, and you're about to see an example of this, because I anticipated it coming into this slot, I'm confident that I can win a gun duel before my torpedoes would hit the target. And I do this because the less time I can spend under enemy fire, the more likely I'm going to come out alive. And 5, you saw me doing this earlier, and it won't be the last time I do it in this replay, is that I'm concealed in smoke. So, you see most people spam high explosive, and now you're going to see me load HE. And the reason I'm going to load AP is that, that was a citadel penetration on a cruiser. Well, damn. It's good. Let's see you do it some more. Yeah, that's right. I got 4 citadels on that cruiser. It's just that you see a lot of people just spam the high explosive, and yes, it does work, but when you know the situations when you can load the AP, penetrate their citadels, you will put them down that much faster, and it all comes back down to being efficient with your HP pool. the less opportunity you give your opponents to do damage to you, the longer your small destroyer HP pool will last. Now granted, you tend to have to come to very close distances to citadel most enemy ships with the small caliber AP ammunition like you saw on the Hatsuharu here. So I would never recommend doing this except when you have the drop or when there are multiple allies in the vicinity for you to spread the enemy's love across. And now, one of those specific things that's a challenge for Japanese destroyer drivers is the very, very slow turret traverse speeds. And I've been using the word anticipation with respect to these guns a few times. And those of you who are familiar with battleship play or cruiser play know how important managing your turrets is with respect to getting shots on time and on target. And now, I've heard some people say, yeah, well, Japanese destroyers pull the trigger if they happen to be in the right direction at a particular target at the right time. Well, I think in order to take your gameplay to the next level with them, you have to start looking at the map, anticipating where the enemy is going to come from, and then pre-turning your turrets to get them where they need to be. This is much like what I did when I dealt with that Furutaka a few minutes ago. It's not particularly hard because ships respond so slowly to changes in the battlefield. I kind of knew his course minutes in advance and could set this up, or set that up rather, before I actually needed it. And as that illustrated not only the power of anticipation, but also the knowledge of knowing which ammunition to use in a particular engagement can help expedite a particular sinking of an enemy ship. And right now, at this particular point in the replay, I really want to highlight something to you all. Right now, I just gotten off that kill with the Furutaka. Another light cruiser pops up, and I believe this is a Königsberg. And I instinctively load the armor piercing. And that's because for most light cruisers, the AP on the Hatsuharu and most of the Japanese destroyers is enough to citadel them if you can aim properly. And that was a really badly aimed shot, I'll be honest about that. And as you can see, with his low health, I probably should not have followed the rule of thumb and just hit him with the high explosive. In the end, we're going to sink him, but I think it took an extra salvo more than it needed to. So, and I really want to highlight that to you. While rules of thumb are good to follow, you should be willing to change it up if the situation clearly doesn't favor it, or you might have a more efficient outcome otherwise. And this will add a little bit more unpredictability to your gameplay from the practical side to the enemy, and it could just make it more efficient to begin with. And now, right, you see me now come back to B, the capture point B, I mean, and I'm not certain who's in there. I suspect that they are behind that island, so I'm going to sail across here, trying to put that island ever more between me and what... Oh god, that's a Cleveland. Okay, let's be a little more careful, shall we? I'm in one salvo distance if he's loading his HE ammunition, so let's go ahead and just pull in here. Oh. Yes, another person has become fond of the slot. Okay, so now, new plan. I'm going to come up behind this island and then try to recapture the B point as soon as I confirm that he is actually going down that slot. It's so genius. And that's something else you can really make use of in any of your destroyers, is make use of the terrain. All of the spotting mechanics, with exception to close proximity in World of Warships, are based on line of sight. So why not make use of it, especially when the enemy is so kind to announce their presence by firing their guns. Right now, I announce to my allies that an enemy is coming down the slot by pinging the map, because they really do need to know that they're surrounded, as it were. So them having prior knowledge of that enemy cruiser will help them last longer.
Battle ends in 5 minutes.
At least I hope they'll win, but as you can see, I don't put their chances very high at the moment. But we can hope that they'll last long enough that we can start capturing some points here. And while we do have a points advantage right now, nope, didn't last long, did it? And that's why it's important to pay attention to the objective of the game mode and how you can best win the battle at any given time. So right now, I just seen those battleships go down, and I want to make certain to expand our lead. And in order to do this, I have to capture the B point. I have to make certain that I capture it before that enemy cruiser captures the C point, because then there's two holding or capture points being held by my team to their one, so we can get double the rate for, well, double the rate of points acquisition for the same amount of time. And it will be a little bit of time before they can fully capture C, so it should expand our lead a little bit. And right now you see that enemy cruiser there just pop up there. It looks like he's been hunting me for a while. So I throw down some torpedoes in the rather off chance that he decided to go in a straight line all that way. But in reality, I know that because I have to capture the D point, he will not be still going on that course. So in reality, I probably should not have fired that salvo, because right now I'm announcing my presence to the whole world. They know exactly where I am. Except right now, because of the way the points are lined up, I don't have a choice. I have got to capture this point if I want to win. It slows down the rate at which their team gets points and will increase my team's point capture rate by an additional, I think, what, 50% over what I would have had before. And at the same time reduces the rate at which they do, and it will force one of their ships to go capture some other point, probably the A point, while this cruiser has to go and sink me, because he's got to protect his, what I see is one battleship down there, but there's probably a second one coming my way. And now we're going to go ahead, and I'm making these little wiggles right here. Even though it reduces my speed, it makes it easier to position for a torpedo run against, oh, and there is that second battleship. And there's one thing that most destroyer captains will tell you: there are three certainties in life: death, taxes, and battleships that drive in straight lines. So right now, because we captured that third point and they weren't able to react fast enough, the only way they're going to win is if they sink me. So right now, after launching those torpedoes, being detected, I throw down smoke. I keep full speed for a little bit there, but after the first puff, the second puff, I reduce speed, try to hide in that smoke screen, throw off the Cleveland's aimed, and we get 4 torpedo hits. Not certain which of those 2 I hit. I don't particularly care. I don't want to care. I'm detected by the Cleveland's aircraft, and now rather than stick around and fight, I get out of dodge. Lose the final turret, but it does no damage otherwise. Go in there, steal the win, laughing off into the sunset like a true villain. Isn't life great? And the moral of the story here is that you should be trying to pick your battles. And there are many factors that can go into that, but I'll boil it down to one question: will fighting secure the win? If it will, then you should engage. If it won't, then you should run. And picking our battles in this case just earned us the Solo Warrior achievement. Wow. Total win stealing like a boss. But we still managed to pick up 2 kills, a light cruisers. Well, one was a light cruiser, the other was a heavy cruiser. Um, did more gun work than I did with the torpedoes, interestingly enough. But it picked up either 3 captures on my own, 2 assisted. That's a fairly good day's work for any destroyer, and it should help explain the huge plethora of experience sitting on the shelf right now. And oh lord, over 3,500 experience. I thought those days were gone when we rolled into open beta test and release. Oh, it's good to see those numbers again. No surprise that that finishes us on top of the charts for experience earned this match. Interestingly enough, the AP shell damage and the HE shell damage were about the same. We didn't really get a chance to do a lot of fire damage to that enemy Congo, but he was pretty much burnt out by the time we got that fire started on his bow. And wow, we really did a number on those 2 battleships, and it looks like we hit both of them. 2 torpedoes each. It's good to be a destroyer, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you for having bared with me for the first video I've done in a while. Eh, Hopefully it was entertaining and intricate, a little more educationally based this time. And I hope that you can pick up some tips and tricks for how to do better in your Japanese destroyers. Recently, I've been kicking the pants off of a few other ships in the game. Please feel free to leave some suggestions in the comments below for any particular ships you'd like to see some footage of or get some tips on how to use. I'd love to help you guys out again. And I hope to have some more videos up in the near future, a little more regularly than I have been able to do over the past few months. We're hoping to correct that. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel or giving it a like down below. It means a lot to me. Hopefully, we get to see you around sometime in the future. See you around. Have a good day.